Have you ever thought about writing a book? Perhaps you've had a journey in your life or even an event that has changed everything. And how do you put that into a story that can actually help others? Well, today my guest is the CEO of Motivational Press, Justin Sachs. Justin, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So what can people do when they have a story and they want to turn it into a book? Where do they start?
Well, the first thing is really establishing what your message is. Who's that target market that you want to reach? And then once you've established that, you can start putting your pen to the paper and getting through what those specific elements are that you want to share with your audience. What are those specific tools, tips, strategies, or principles that you can offer people to support them in growing in their life in whatever area you perceive yourself to be an expert in?
So when I think about a book and I think about someone's life story, I think about a memoir or possibly even just a fiction book.
Well, it's true. I mean, for a lot of us, it's a story that really guides our telling of our different message that you want to provide, right? So for many of us, we have a story that we've either made up or that is true from our past experiences that has taught us a lesson. And that lesson is really what we want to share with other people. And then when we can actually create tools, strategies, principles, as I said, around it, and once we create that, that's what really gives people the ability to influence their lives.
I think you're raising like a really important point for if someone's watching this at home and it's like, wow, I had this accident or I went through this divorce or this illness. It's not just the experience of going through that life journey, it's taking the lesson that we learned and turning that into the content for the book.
Exactly. So many of us have been told stories from our parents
Right.
or have gone through crazy experiences in our lives. I say that we all have faced adversity at some point in our lives, right? And that's the perfect premise for a story, for a book. So for many of us, that's what we take into our writing and into our manuscript that we can then turn into a book that we release all over the world.
So here's the burning question: fiction book or nonfiction book?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I personally prefer nonfiction because it's real. People love real stories, but that's not to say that a fiction book can't be successful. I think that if you're really looking to make a measurable difference in people's lives, whether it's business or health and wellness or success, a nonfiction book happens to be the most effective way for you to really share your message and get it out there.
So what's hot? What are some of the hot trends in publishing today? What are the books that are actually selling? Because there's a lot of books out there.
It's true. I mean, one of the top ones is always weight loss. It always has been and it always will be.
So if you have a story about weight loss.
So if you have a weight loss story, that's the one, right? I mean, and then in addition, money is such an important issue right now for so many people, employment issues. So how to be more effective in your job, how to secure your job, and how to use your income to really make more money in your life is very effective and something that we're seeing a lot of success with.
So I'm sure that there are people who are watching the show and they're saying, God, I would love to write a book. I mean, there is a statistic that 8 out of 10 Americans believe they have a book within them,
right.
But it feels like it's too much work. So how do you get started? I mean, I've heard stories of books taking 10 years to write.
It's so true. I mean, we have authors all the time that come to us after 5, 6, 7 years.
That's a long time.
My gosh, it's been so long, right?
Right.
It's about time. And for many of them, it has been, right? But the easiest way to do it is to set up an outline for yourself. Set up a map, right? The first thing I recommend people do is just write down the top 10 to 20 things you really want to share with people, the top 10 to 20 lessons, the top 10 to 20 tools, and then begin writing out and expanding upon those tools. And that's really the best way to get things started. We have an author that works with us. His name's James White, and he wrote 42 businesses under $100. And so the first thing he did was found, this business we can start under $100, and he just kept finding more and more and more until he had 42 different businesses. It's been one of our best sellers, and he would have never imagined when he first wrote it that it would have sold hundreds of thousands of copies internationally.
Yeah, that raises such a clever point, is that we don't have to pull all the expertise from within us. We can also go out and research and create like an overview of 10 different things or 12 different things or 42 business or 99 steps that you can make a book that way as well.
It's so true. When I first started my first book, my author's coach, Ann McIndoe, recommended that I go to the bookstore and look at all of my competition. And take all my competition's books.
Did that almost shut you down?
It almost did, because you're looking at this aisle full of books. How am I ever going to compete?
Where am I going to fit in between there?
Exactly. And so, but it's a great way to really identify, what's going to be my positioning in this market? What's going to be my uniqueness? What's going to make my book special?
Yeah, where am I the expert?
Exactly. And that was the most important point, most important piece really was seeing, okay, of all these books, I really stand out here. And I can be different by sharing some of the same things that they've shared, but really putting my spin on it. And that's what makes so many people so successful.
So what can a book do for you? I mean, once you get that book in your hands, how does it change your life?
Absolutely. I mean, for the general population, a book is phenomenal because think about it, you're going into a job interview and instead of placing a resume on the table,
it's like, here's
you place
my book.
your book. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's unbelievable, right? And or if you're in sales, taking that book in, we're working with a lot of life insurance agents right now who have a book that represents everything that they're pitching to these various corporations, these various industry leaders, and they want to do life insurance policies with them. So they present the book, and that stands as their highly credible piece of expertise rather than a brochure or a letterhead or anything like that. It's a very, very different positioning. And then as an expert, being able to really contribute at a high level positions you as the thought leader, as the person that shares your insight to make the biggest difference in people's lives.
I think if you want to get to that next level, what I've noticed the most is that the difference that stands between people who are out there wanting to inspire is having a book. It positions you to be able to appeal to the masses. I know that you also offer not just books in the English language, but in other languages.
Right, I mean, it's so critical. I mean, now if you think about it, in the United States, ebooks are being read more and more and more and more and more, especially with Kindle and the iBook store and everything.
I mean, it's kind of mind-blowing.
It is, it's unbelievable. So what we say is that the cool thing is that internationally, in Russia, in India, in China, in Taiwan, all over the world, print books are still being read more often than ebooks. So it's very cool to see how many books are able to be positioned in the international market and be sold by the thousands simply because they have that international appeal and print books are being read so often in these other countries.
So you raised something that's really interesting that I thought about recently is how do you even take a book that's in English and get it to other countries, and that actually your book can be more popular in another country than it is here in your own language.
It's so funny, but the best part is
right.
I don't have to worry about any of the translation.
Right.
And it really does work that way, but the last thing I'm going to do is sit down with my team and translate a book into Chinese, Japanese, Korean, or any other language, right? So we take the book, we send it out to the publishers, and then they handle all the translation. It's kind of nice about being in America or being in the United Kingdom or even Australia or Canada is the English language is so prevalent in the book industry that we kind of lead the show, we run the format, and we really get to control what goes into the international markets. So it allows us a really high level of positioning in terms of approaching the international publishers.
So as the CEO of Motivational Press, what do you look for inside a book or from an author?
One of the biggest things we want to see is that they're involved in their community at a high level, that they know a lot of people that are going to be interested in their book, right? Because if they're a leader, whether it be in their company or whether it be in their community, whether it's a nonprofit organization or what have you, the more circles of influence that they're leaders of, the more successful that book is going to be. So ultimately, if they have a huge Facebook community, if they have a huge nonprofit following, or if they're just giving back at a high level in their community, very often those books become very successful locally and then can bridge into regionally and nationally and then internationally.
So if you want to write a book, if you have a story inside that you know will make a difference in people's lives, actually probably the stronger place to start is to build out your social media locally and to build out your circles of influence locally at the same time you're writing the book.
That's exactly right. Yes, start as early as possible in starting to build those relationships and really stay connected with people. Let people know you're writing a book. Tell people that they're really, get people excited about it, right? Because most people are going to be very negative about the fact that you're writing a book. Oh, who are you to write a book? I can't tell you how many times I heard that when I first wrote my first book, right? Who are you to tell us how to live our lives and things like that, right? But ultimately, those are the first people to end up buying your book later on. That's the secret that no one really knows.
The naysayers
yeah, exactly.
are the best customers.
Yes, they are, unfortunately, ironically, really.
So as you're mapping out that book, you're building your community and people who are going to buy the book, and you do your outline, then how long does it take to fill in all the spaces? I mean, I know it depends on everyone, but what's a reasonable amount of time that someone can have a book? Can they have it within a year? Can they have it within 18 months?
Most of our experts, we have authors that do it really, really fast and within 60 to 90 days have their manuscript.
60 to 90 days?
60 to 90 days, yeah, they're really working it. But then we also have other experts who take more like 6 months, 9 months and have their book complete, and that's more of a reasonable time frame. But then there's the authors that just take their time, and 3 to 5 years later, you're still waiting for their book, wondering when it's going to come out.
So once the book is ready to go, what's that next step after that? So it's all written, you're ready to give birth to the baby.
Right.
Is this where you take over?
Absolutely, yeah. As soon as that manuscript's done, then we start working on the book cover. And that's really the most important thing.
That is exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's so exciting. And most people think that the actual writing is the most important part. And as soon as they're done with the book, that's it. They're done, right?
You
No,
take it.
The journey has just begun. It's really true, because the reality is that that book cover and the title of the book is the most important part, and it's the most important piece that's going to make the biggest difference. So that's something we work on usually about 30 days before you finish the manuscript to really start positioning that effectively. And then we do the interior layout and the editing in reverse order, the editing and then the interior layout, and then we're ready to publish and distribute the book.
So now I have heard stories that with traditional publishing, so you're a non-traditional publisher, that it can take a year from the time the publisher brings in the book to when it actually appears on shelves. So how are you different?
Sometimes even longer now. Sometimes it takes even 2 years for some of these books to come out. The way we work is, we like to get books done and out within 90 to 180 days. So we say, look, if we can get it done in 3 months, great, let's get it out there, right? And depending on the time of year, there's, like health and wellness books are great in January. Back to school teen books are usually good in August or September. So we like to time them according to when they're going to be most successful. But with that being said, the sooner we can get those out and selling, the better off we're going to be, as long as we can effectively promote it and get it out there in time.
Wonderful. So if somebody has a book, they are already writing it, but they need some help either finishing it, what would you say to that person?
I'd hire a ghostwriter. I would get someone on their team to just do it for them, right? Most books out there, ironically, are written with a ghostwriter. If not the whole thing, a big portion of it. And what it does is the ghostwriter is really going to sit there with you and interview you and find out exactly what your message is, how you can craft that most effectively, and then they're going to put their pen to the paper and do the really hard work for you so that you don't have to worry about that piece.
One of the strategies that I've used with myself on my second book, and then with other people who have helped create books, is actually interviewing them. Interview and then transcribe all those questions, and that creates a lot of content. So you're just not staring at that white page.
Right.
How does that strategy work?
It works really, really well. We do that a few different ways. Some of the times we just have people interview the expert, right? So if you're trying to write a book, have someone else interview you, record it, transcribe it, and then you have a whole bunch of content you can now edit and work with. The other way is to find a whole bunch of industry executives within your industry that are thought leaders and interview them, transcribe it, and now you have a whole bunch of content from your interviews of that person. You become more of a messenger.
Get other people to write your book.
There you go. There you go.
That's very strategic. So if somebody wants to connect with you, Justin, how do they find you?
Motivationalpress.com is the easiest way to find us, and we're also available all over social media and all over the internet.
Justin Sachs, CEO of Motivational Press, thank you for being here and helping all of us get those books started and getting them into the bookstores and all around the world in so many different languages. Very, very exciting.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for being here.